Hey everyone, Seymour Balzac here, and I just wanted to bring you some new Zabu decks um, that hopefully will help you have some fun with the new card. It's the new exciting Battle Pass card, and people want to play with it. So I've got a few decks here for people that are looking for ideas. Now, it's important to note that myself and any other content creator posting decks this early about Zabu will not have the full refined deck. These decks are going to get refined, they're going to get tighter, new lists will come out as time goes on. But for early decks, as people are figuring out Zabu, I think these will be decks will be fun, and I think they'll get you some cubes too. Um, the unfortunate thing for Zabu to note is if you're trying to go all in on its ability, unfortunately, I think the best decks do actually require not have, but do require Series 5 cards. So I've got two decks here to show you that have Series 5 cards. One of them is a Sherry deck, one of them is a Darkhawk deck. And then I've got one deck that's an all-in Zabu deck that doesn't have Series 5 cards. And then I've got another deck that I think is a more optimal use of Zabu if you don't have the Sherry or the Darkhawk. So I don't have any Series 5 cards. I won't have any gameplay for the Series 5 decks. These are just purely theory crafted. They're not tested. Uh, but I think they're at the very least they'll be good decks to identify the core of the deck, and then you can kind of swap around your support and tech cards as you play and refine the deck. And then I'll give you gameplay for the final two decks, since I have all the cards for those decks. So let's get into the decks. So the first deck I'm bringing you is the Sherry deck. Um, and the core of this deck is essentially Zabu, Sherry, Wong, your Typhoid Mary, your Taskmaster, your Absorbing Man, and potentially Sarah. I know that's a huge core. It's over half the deck, but that's kind of what the deck is focused around. So basically, you're gonna play Zabu on 3, and then you have two lines on turn 4. You're either gonna go Wong Shuri, which will mean the next card you play has its power buffed by 4 times because you're getting two Shuri triggers. So you basically go Wong Shuri, and then you can go Sarah. That's a 16 power Sarah. Seems pretty good to me. Which then, with Zabu out and Sarah out, all of your 4 cost cards cost 1 less, and your Taskmaster only costs 4. So then on turn 6, that lets you Taskmaster, copies the Sarah. You still have 2 energy left. You can play your Absorbing Man for 1, copy the Taskmaster, and then you still have 1 more energy for whether it's one of these counter cards or just stats in Rock Slide or Typhoid Mary. So you're basically dropping 16 power on turn 5, and then 32 power plus a 4 drop on turn 6. Seems pretty good to me. Um, the other line of play would be Zabu into Sherry Typhoid Mary, which would get it up to 20. And then on turn 5, you Taskmaster the Typhoid Mary, so that copies the 20, but then is -1 for Mary, so it's a 19. And then on turn 6, you can drop 3 4 drops. So then you drop the Absorbing Man, which copies the Taskmaster, so it copies the 19, and then is -1 for Mary, so it's 18. And then you can play out 2 other 4 drops, like 2 of these, basically. Um, so that's kind of what you're looking to do with the deck. You're just basically trying to uh, get something big out, copy with Taskmaster, copy the Taskmaster with the Absorbing Man, and you kind of got 2 lines of play for that. Um, I've included Shang-Chi and Enchantress as 4 drops. I think anytime you can have cost reduction on tech cards, they're almost like auto includes for me. Like Sarah Control is a good deck because you get the tech cards reduced by 1, and Sarah Control normally runs Shang-Chi and Enchantress, and that's using them as 3 cost. Well, now with Zabu, they're 1 cost. So like even if you don't hit anything, it's a 1/4 and a 1/3, which is like solid. But if you hit something with them, it's a 1/4 and a 1/3 that wrecked your opponent's game plan. Like that's so good. And then you got the rock slide because most 4 drops don't have like a ton of power. Most 4 drops are like 6 power. So Rock Slide is in here as kind of like a backup. If you don't have the Typhoid Mary or the Wong, you can do like Zabu, Sherry, Rock Slide, Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, and these are all still 12 power, so it's kind of like you're getting 3 Hulks. Seems pretty good to me. Um, and then also if you have If you're playing it on turn 4, it disrupts your opponent's game plan as well. So it's got a little bit utility there. So that's why I included Rock Slide, but you can easily swap out this card if you think there's something better. Same thing with the early game. Ice Man's just a good one drop, disrupts your opponent. You're in the Zabu mirror. If it hits their Zabu, well then awesome. Like Zabu a turn later is so much worse. You got Lizard here just because it's good stats, and it helps you kind of keep priority. The one, I guess, like if you're going for the Taskmaster absorbing man shenanigans, if you don't have priority, your big thing, whether it's your Typhoon Mare or your Sarah, could get Shang-Chi'd before you get a chance to copy it. Getting the additional stats on Lizard help you keep priority. So if you have priority going to your Taskmaster turn, well then you're guaranteed to get the copy, even if they have Shang-Chi. You still got the copy before it got off. So that's why I included Lizard into this deck. But yeah, that's kind of what this deck's looking to do. Like I said, these are kind of your core cards on this side of the deck, and you can kind of play around with these cards, in my opinion. But yeah, I hope this deck, if you have Sherry, I hope this deck provides you a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. So the next deck I want to bring you is the Zabu Darkhawk deck. So I'll start off by explaining Darkhawk and the Darkhawk package because it's a new card. So I imagine a lot of people probably haven't seen it. I've only seen it like twice in game. So let's get into it. So you've got Darkhawk, which is a 4 energy, combo as well as Zabu. 1 power, but has ongoing of +2 power for each card of your opponent's deck. Usually, people end the game with 3 cards in their deck, so usually this will be a 4/7. Most 4 drops without a negative ability cap out at 4/6, so that's already a really good rate for a 4 drop. And then once you start adding cards to their deck, it gets bigger, so it's really easy to get this to insane value for a 4 drop. Now, the Darkhawk package is 4 cards. It's Darkhawk and 3 support cards. But the main support card is Rock Slide, also a 4 drop. So that's why this Darkhawk package is really, really good with Zabu. So you have Rock Slide, on reveal, shuffle 2 rocks into your opponent's deck. Basically reads, give your Darkhawk +4 power, and potentially mess up your opponent's draw. On top of that, Rock Slide is 6 power, which as I mentioned is kind of the max you can get with 4 drops that have a positive ability. So it's just overall insanely good for this deck. Then the other 2 cards for Darkhawk are Black Widow, which is a 2 drop, which Zabu decks are really I find lacking in early game, especially early game that synergizes with the deck. Well, the Darkhawk package gives you a 1 and a 2 drop that synergize with the deck. So you have Black Widow. So it's on reveal, add a Widow's Bite to their hand. The Widow's Bite prevents them from drawing until they play it. So they'll play it on their next turn. So Black Widow basically prevents them from drawing for 1 turn, which is effectively adding a card to their deck. So it prevents them from drawing for 1 turn, gives your Darkhawk +2 power. Then you have Korg, adds a rock to their deck. It's just mini Rock Slide. It adds +2 to your Darkhawk and increases the chance that they mess up their draw. So that's your early game in this deck. And then the big reason why I think this deck will be bigger than the Shuri one is you have the Mystique. Now, the first thing you're going to be doing with the Mystique is copying the Darkhawk, right? What's better than 1 Darkhawk? 2 Darkhawks. So if you're going to be doing that, it's just important to note that you have to do that on turn 6 in this deck, the way this deck is built. Because on turn 5, you're playing Sarah, and you cannot Darkhawk and Mystique on 4, even with Zabu, right? If you Zabu, you Darkhawk on 4, you only have 2 energy left. You have to play a different 4 drop, you Sarah on 5. Now your Mystique can't copy the Darkhawk. So if you're going to Mystique the Darkhawk, you're going to want to do that on 6. Darkhawk will cost 1, Mystique will cost 2. That's 3 energy. You still have 3 more energy to play out a bunch of things. So I think that's a totally viable line. But the reason why I really like Mystique in this deck is if you're running into a lot of counters, like say a lot of people are running Enchantress and Rogue because Zabu is the new hot thing everyone's playing with, Mystique can give you a good way to get around that. So basically the idea is you drop Zabu on 3, and then on 4 you play Mystique. Mystique will copy the Zabu, and if you do it in a different lane, you basically have Zabu at home in a different lane, and now if they Rogue or Enchantress your Zabu, well, you still have another Zabu, and then you just play Sarah on 5, and then you can still dump your hand on 6. And it adds some resiliency into the deck that that Shuri deck doesn't have. So I think that's why I like this deck better. Now, it's important to note if you find that's the main line you're having to take, like this, the way this deck is designed, the main line is Darkhawk Mystique with a backup of Zabu Mystique. But if your main line that you're having to take because you're running into too many counters is Zabu Mystique, then you're going to want to improve the early game of this deck because priority on turn 4 will be incredibly critical. And that's kind of one of those things that I was talking about in the intro about refining and playtesting. If the early game for this deck is super critical to ensure the Zabu and Mystique, then you're going to be looking at including cards like Lizard, potentially even like Ebony Maw, Sunspot. You want cards that will give you just a lot of power that can ensure you have priority going into 4, so your Mystique copies the Zabu and you're safe from their Enchantress and Rogue. So that's one thing that you'll have to kind of play around with, and it really just depends on what the meta's like at the time. Now, outside of that, you've got the Shang-Chi and the Enchantress, like the other deck. Like I mentioned, anytime you have tech cards at reduced cost, I think those are pretty much auto includes. The only time you take them out is if the meta is in such a spot that you're not running into any good targets for them, right? But I think right now Zabu is going to be the hot thing to play, so you're going to want Enchantress, and if you run into Zabu Sherry, the Shang-Chi will also help, right? So I think it's going to be good for that. And then on top of that, we've thrown in Strong Guy, which I'm incredibly excited about because I have not seen this card since Series 2. Since I entered Series 3, not one person has played Strong Guy. And for good reason, it really isn't that great in Series 3. But with this deck, you're going to be emptying your hand very consistently. So I think Strong Guy is a 210 a lot of the times in this deck. And on top of that, as I mentioned, 6 power is pretty much the highest you're getting from most 4 drops. So Hellcow is just good for this because you just drop it on 6, so the discard doesn't matter. And 6 power is good for a 4 drop. And it helps enable the strong guy in the event that you're not able to empty your hand. If you're not able to empty your hand, you're only going to have 1 to 2 cards left. So your Hellcow is going to empty your hand and helps enable the strong guy. And so I think that's a really good package to throw into here as well. And then finally, you've got the thing, which is like this is just something I threw in just for stats. If you're dumping a bunch of 4 drops, it's just a big thing that you can play for 4. You don't want Typhoid Mary because you're going to be playing out the 9 cards you have. So Typhoid Mary is going to be giving -1 to the other 8 cards you played, which means she's effectively like a 4/2. So you don't want that. And I don't think you want White Queen because White Queen, if you have White Queen and you don't have your Hell Cow, now you're not activating your Strong Guy. So it makes your Strong Guy less consistent. On top of that, the White Queen ability is pointless if it's on turn 6, and actually, like I mentioned, it hurts you. The only time White Queen benefits you in this deck is you play it on 4, and it gives you information about what your opponent's doing, but you're never going to be playing that card your opponent that you drew off your opponent. So it has a little less value in this deck. I think if anything, if you want to cut the thing, you're looking at including a Chavez. Because this deck really revolves around getting Zabu on 3 and Sarah on 5. And Chavez is really good at increasing the consistency of drawing certain cards in your deck before turn 6. Because basically on turns 1 to 5, you're playing with an 11 card deck. So with Chavez, it increases your odds of getting Zabu by 3 and Sarah by 5. With that being said, Chavez has the downside of you're not going to be able to play it on turn 6, and it's 1 less card for you to vomit out on turn 6. So it's going to make your strong guy less consistent, but again, that's why you have the Hell Cow. So that's one thing that definitely is like another thing that will require like a lot of playtesting to figure out if the Chavez is worth it or not. I think potentially it might be. I would actually start by dropping the thing and including a Chavez, to be honest. And if you find it's not helping that much, then maybe you'd swap it back out for the thing, or you swap it out for like a lizard or whatever. Um, but overall, I think this deck will be the best Zabu deck, at least to start. I think it's going to be really good. If you have Dark Hawk, you have to try this. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be really good. And I hope those of you that are lucky enough to have Dark Hawk do really enjoy this deck. And for those of you that don't have it, watch out for this deck. It's probably going to be coming your way. So the next deck I'm going to bring you is what I'm calling my Zabu initial build. I think out of the 4 decks, this is probably the weakest one I'm showing you. But this deck is for those people that don't have Series 5 cards, um, and want to just go all in on the Zabu ability. You know, it's early in the season. Rank doesn't matter yet. You just want to have some fun. You want to play a bunch of four drops. I think this will be the deck for you. It, like I said, it won't be the most consistent. If you don't have your Zabu on 3, you're gonna have to retreat. The whole deck is built around Zabu. Um, and it's pretty easy to get countered. A lot of people are probably going to be running counters, but when it pops off, and it's pretty fun. So I definitely recommend checking this deck out more if you're looking to just have some fun with Zabu and you just want to play a deck that will just dump out a bunch of four drops. Um, I've played this deck twice already, and I'm 2-0, but I don't think that's going to hold up. I think that's a little bit lucky. And by the time I release this entire video on YouTube, I'll have played this deck more because I want more than 2 games from the gameplay video at the end. But at the time of recording this deck explanation, I am 2-0 with this deck, which did surprise me a little bit. So maybe it's a little bit better than I give it credit for. But let's get into the deck and the cards. The core cards are obviously Zabu and Sarah. And then I would say Strong Guy and Hellcow. That's I know Strong Guy as a key card in Series 3. You guys must think I'm crazy, but hear me out. And I kind of already explained in the Darkhawk deck, but basically the idea is to play Zabu on 3, and then you play 2 4s on 4, and then you play Sarah on 5, and then you dump your hand on 6. Like with this deck, your hand's going to be empty, so Strong Guy is basically a 210. Strong Guy is kind of like your main win con, so that's kind of what you're going for with this deck. Hellcow is in there to help enable the Strong Guy. There's a lot of locations to add cards to your hand, so Hellcow helps empty those out of your hand. You got Jessica Jones as a good turn 4 play. The only thing to know about Jessica Jones is it's not that great on 6, and most of your 4s are being played on 6. So I actually kind of had debate about including this card in the deck, but there's not really a ton of amazing 4s in Series 1, 2, and 3. So I've included it in here. You really want to play this on 4. You don't want to be playing this on 6. The other good thing about Jessica Jones is a lot of people run Storm. So Jessica Jones is almost like a Storm counter, right? You can play that on turn 4 into that location they've stormed. So that helps with that. And then I've included Iceman and Korg because I think what a lot of people forget about with Zabu is turns 1 and 2 exist. So you just kind of want some stuff to do turns 1 and 2. I've got Rock Slide in here, so I threw in Korg, so you're getting a lot of rocks into the deck, which will hopefully mess up your opponent's draw. Iceman is just a great value 1-drop. If you're in the Zabu mirror, you hit their Zabu. Zabu coming out on turn 4 is significantly worse than turn 3. And then as a 2-drop, I included Angela. Because you're playing out so many cards, you're going to get Angela up to 6 power. And on top of that, if you don't have Angela on 2, it's still a good card on 6 because Sarah makes it cost 1. So you can still play it out along with 5 4-drops, and you can get it up to 6 power pretty easily. So I think Angela is a good card for this deck. You've got the Shang-Chi and Enchantress. Again, reduced cost tech cards I think are really good and auto includes. Rock Slide is a great card for turn 4 as well. So you're kind of looking to Jessica Jones and Rock Slide on 4 unless you need to, say, Enchantress Zabu on 4. These are kind of the 2 cards you look to play on 4. And as I mentioned before too, in one of the other decks, the most 4-drops kind of top out at 6 power. So this is kind of the most power you're looking at from a 4-drop. And then finally, you've got the Thing, which again, same reason as the Darkhawk video, I did not include White Queen on the Strong Guy. I think White Queen is potentially an option for Darkhawk because Strong Guy is not your main win con. Strong Guy is your main win con here, so I'm really against adding in the White Queen as it decreases your consistency of the Strong Guy. So that's why I just have the Thing for pure stats. But if someone can think of something better for that slot, I'm all ears. But yeah, it's just in there for pure stats. You're just trying to drop a bunch of 4-drops on turn 6, and this is one of the bigger 4-drops you can get. I would not play Typhoid Mary because you're going to be playing out the 9 cards you get, right? So Typhoid Mary is giving -8, right? -1 to all your other 8 cards. So Typhoid Mary is kind of like a 4-2. So I would not play Typhoid Mary in this case. So that's again why I've included the Thing, is I think the other options that just provide you high power are not as good as it. There's too much downside to them. So overall, this deck is fun. It definitely can win you games. It's just going to be not the most consistent. If you don't have Zabu on 3, you're probably retreating. And for that reason, you could even look at including an America Chavez. America Chavez increases your odds of drawing a a card on turns 1 to 5. So if you need Zabu on 3, it's a critical card, and Sarah on 5, it's a critical card. Shavas could be really good for this deck. It's just important to note that Shavas, similar to White Queen, will decrease the consistency of Strong Guy because you can't play it. So you're gonna need the Hell Cow to make the Strong Guy active. So that's just a trade-off with Chavez, and that's 100% something I will be playtesting. Because Chavez increases the consistency of getting Zabu and Sarah, it decreases consistency of Strong Guy. Which consistency is going to matter more is going to take playtesting. So you could cut the thing and include a Chavez, as an example. Or you could cut like Korg if you don't want the early game and include Chavez. Um, that's kind of what I'm looking at there. But yeah, if you don't have Series 5 cards, you're looking to dump out a bunch of cards, this is kind of the idea you're going for. The last deck I'm going to bring you guys today is more of an example of where I think Zabu will really shine if you don't have the Series 5 cards. I think if you don't have Series 5 cards, you're looking to more use Zabu as a support card rather than going all in on its ability. And I think in general with new cards, that's kind of the best thing to do is you want to look for existing proven archetypes to slot them in, uh, because those are already good. So if you find something they're good in, then it'll just make that deck better, right? Rather than trying to construct a whole new deck. Now, the whole new decks, don't get me wrong, are fun, and I've included 3 of those in this video. Um, but I think the good new decks, unfortunately, are going to require Series 5 cards. So if you want a good deck with Zabu, I think you're looking at using it more as a support card than a build around. So where would Zabu be good with a support card? Well, you're going to look at your decks, and you're going to see what decks have critical 4-drops that would greatly benefit from cost reduction. And that deck would be good for Zabu. So in my case, I identified right away my negative Wong deck. And I think in general, Zabu is going to be really good for decks that run Surfer and Wong. It reduces the cost of the Wong to 2, which means you can say like Wong Mystique on 5, which gives your opponent 1 less turn to counter your Wong. And if you have Priority in 6, they can't even counter it at all. Um, and then on top of that, it's a 3-drop, so it gets hit by the Surfer, right? So here we've got a Surfer Wong deck, and it happens to be a deck that also runs negative. And Zabu combos decently well with that too, right? So Zabu, if it gets hit by negative, well, it becomes a 2-3, right? It's not the best thing to get hit by negative, but it still benefits. And on top of that, one issue with this deck before was if you had both negative and Wong in your hand, you're either going to go, you have to pick, do I want to go the negative route to the win or the Wong route to win? And you kind of have to pick one or the other, but you can't do both. Well, Zabu now it's like, why not both? So now you can negative and Wong on 4, and that's going to give, like, I think a lot of extra value and a lot of consistency to this deck. So that's why I've kind of thrown it in here. Now, this deck has gone through some iterations and changes since I last did a video about it. So I'll give you guys just a quick rundown on it. And then you'll get some more gameplay on this too at the end here. So basically, the deck revolves around Surfer, Negative, and Wong. You basically fill it with cards that combo with as many as those 3 cards as you can. So critical card like that is say Mystique. Mystique gets buffed by Surfer. With negative, it becomes a 0/3 and it copies the Wong ability, right? Mystique is huge for this deck. And Brood is also huge for this deck. Brood with just Surfer, like, is just a 15 power card. It's just so good with Surfer. I'd say it's the best card with Surfer. You really want Brood for a Surfer deck to be good. Brood will just win you a lane with Surfer, right? Especially if you get the Wong on the Surfer. Not even the Mystique Wong, just Brood Wong Surfer will just win you a lane. So that's an incredibly good card with this deck. And then you've got Wolfsbane and Ironheart. They both combo well with negative because they become a 1/3 and a 0/3. They combo with Wong because they have on reveal abilities. Ironheart helps spread your power across the board. Wolfsbane will just help you win that long lane. And they both get buffed by Surfer. Um, then you've got Bishop, which combos well with negative in 2 ways. One, if you get it out on turn 3. Before Zabu, this was like the card you're playing on 3. Now it's probably your backup card for 3, with Zabu being your main card for 3. But you can play this on 3, and then you have your negative. And then because of negative, you're playing out extra cards, so Bishop gets buffed up a bunch of extra, and it gets hit by the Surfer. Or if it's in your deck, and it gets hit by negative, it's now a 1/3. So it's also good in that regard. And then you've also got the Iron Man. Now, in a roundabout way, I think Zabu actually made Iron Man and Mystique more consistent in this deck. So Iron Man before was a bit of a dead card. If like Iron Man, if it gets hit with negative, and then you draw it, it's just game winning. It's so good. It's so insanely good. That's why it's in here. But it was kind of a dead card before in your hand if you drew it, because you didn't really have room to just play something on 5 in this deck, right? In this deck, you're either you're really looking to play Wong on 4 or 5, and then Mystique to follow up the Wong on 4 or 5, depending on if the Wong got negatived or not. Now with Zabu, you can negative Wong on 4, Iron Man and lane on 5, and then on 6, you can Mystique to copy the Iron Man. And so, yes, you're not mistaking the Wong, but now you have 2 lanes that have the Iron Man ability, and you're still getting a double trigger on your Surfer, and then that double trigger is getting doubled in 2 lanes. So it's kind of the same effect as if you had mystiqued the Wong, but it gives you additional play lines, and that kind of play line also doesn't get countered as hard. Like if you Wong Mystique and then the Enchantress, you just lose. But if you Wong Iron Man one lane, Mystique another lane, well, if the Enchantress your Wong, you still have a chance in the other 2 lanes. So being able to play out that negative and Wong together on 4 really does open up that turn 5 for a non-negative Iron Man, which you can then copy with Mystique. So I think Zabu actually kind of in a roundabout way, like I said, added more consistency to Iron Man, and it really made Iron Man more of a viable target for Mystique. Before it felt like Mystique was, if you didn't copy Wong, it was a dead card. Now you've got 2 things it can copy. It's a lot more reliability. And then finally, you've got Psylocke and Forge as your 2-drops. Psylocke lets you put out the negative a turn early, so that basically gives you an extra like flipped card, which is really good. And then Forge combos really well with the Brood, either turn 2 Forge into turn 3 Brood, or you may do like a negative Wong on 4, and then you do Mystique on 5. Plus, I find myself actually doing this a lot the more I play this deck. Mystique, Forge on 5, and you Forge the Wong Mystique lane, because if your opponent is going to shut you down, at least you got something off, right? You got that Forge off. It's giving you +8 the next thing you play. It still gives you a chance if they shut it down. Alternatively, like Psylocke also isn't bad into the Long Mystique on turn 5 as well, because it gives you a bunch of extra energy to play out a bunch of extra stuff on turn 6. So having some 2-drops in here so you can go like native Wong on 4 into Mystique 2-drop on 5 to make it so you, if your Wong gets countered, at least you got something out of it. I find it has a lot of value. Plus, it gives you something to do on 2 to help you curve out the game as well. So that's kind of how this deck works. And overall, as I mentioned, I think you want to do what I did with this deck. I found a deck that had been working for me, that Zabu would just naturally kind of slide right in there, right? It's got critical 4-drops, it reduces the cost of them, combos well with Surfer. So I think this is actually your best route to take for Zabu if you don't have Sherry or Darkhawk. So I hope you guys find some decks that this works well for you. If you find any other decks that Zabu works great as a support card, please let me know. I would love to hear them. I would love to try them out. In the meantime, I hope you guys like this deck and the other 3 decks I showed you, and let's get into the gameplay. There's the Zabu. Oh, this is just a garbage set of locations. I'm gonna save this for turn 6. This is getting played on Jotunheim turn 6. Hey, Zabu for free. I think I'm just gonna Jessica Jones. Cerebro 2 deck. So these all be 1. Okay, yeah, so I just passed this turn. Okay, this is interesting. So I'm gonna Sarah here, because I basically have 5 slots. And then I can play these 5 cards that I'm gonna have in these 5 slots. The other option is Sarah there, which basically puts it at like a 3 power. Yeah, so do that. Okay. So this is gonna get +8. Actually, he's revealing first. Oh, we've got this. We've got this with Enchantress. I can't play crossbones. That's funny. Angela, Enchantress, Rock Slide, Shang-Chi. Easy. So you don't Zabu expansion, because it just increased, like, there's a chance that something could come out that would steal its ability. So we'll just Zabu, right?
Opponent snapped.
Okay. Wonder what they've got. They don't know what I'm playing, so it's not based on a counter. Lockjaw deck, okay. I think my opponent forgot about the Bifrost, because they just filled up their Lockjaw lane there. Some spot that's not going to get Lockjawed. Sarah here, because you don't want to group your ongoing together. I guess, yeah, my opponent probably should have played the Sunspot here if they wanted to keep their Lockjaw open. They should do the Wasp again. It's always funny when that happens. It's a nice vision skin. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No matter what, I can play... Like, I can play anything next turn. This deck's not gonna run, like, Enchantress. I think I just hold for a turn. And dump my whole hand next turn. Okay. This is the power of Zabu. That's going there, and that's going there. Those two win there. That goes there. And we go here to secure this lane. And that's Zabu deck at its absolute peak.